The Galactic Coalition's recruitment center on Proxima Station buzzed with activity, as species from across known space lined up for military assessment. Eleanor Harris stood among them, her frame seeming almost fragile compared to the towering Craxi warriors and the armored Velthan commandos. At 5'6", with dark hair pulled into a practical bun, she drew skeptical glances from the recruitment officers. Another human? Commander Veshtar clicked his mandibles dismissively. The insectoid officer had processed thousands of recruits, and humans rarely impressed him. They lacked the Craxi's natural armor, the Velthans for arms, or the Zephron's telepathic combat coordination. Standard infantry assignment. Next, Eleanor didn't argue. She simply nodded and moved forward. The training facility on Garrison Moon 7 became her home for the next 6 months. From day one, her fellow recruits made their opinions clear. George Mackenzie, a fellow human from the Edinburgh colonies, was one of the few who didn't openly mock her. "Don't let them get to you," George said during their first meal, sliding his tray next to hers in the mess hall. "Half these aliens think all humans are soft. Let them think what they want," Eleanor replied, her gray eyes focused on the tactical manual she'd been studying. "I'm not here to impress them," but the doubts persisted. During physical conditioning, the Craxi recruits lifted twice her weight. In combat simulations, the Velthan's multiple limbs gave them overwhelming advantages. Instructor Drolinex, a scarred Velthan veteran, openly questioned why humans were even admitted to coalition forces. Fragile bones, weak muscles, slow reflexes, he listed during a particularly brutal training session. "Tell me, human Eleanor, what exactly do your kind contribute to warfare?" Eleanor wiped sweat from her brow, her muscles screaming from the exercises. "Adaptability, sir, and stubbornness," the other recruits laughed. But Eleanor kept training. She studied every combat doctrine in the Coalition database. While others slept, she ran tactical simulations. She learned to exploit her smaller size, turning perceived weakness into advantage. In hand-to-hand combat, she discovered that humans' flexible joints and endurance gave her options the stronger, but less agile aliens lacked. She learned to think 3 moves ahead, to use terrain and psychology as weapons. George became her training partner, someone who understood the constant pressure of being underestimated. Together, they pushed each other further than either could have gone alone. "You're insane," George panted after she convinced him to run a double training session. "You know that, right?" "Probably," Eleanor agreed, already reviewing footage of their sparring match. "But I'm getting better." Graduation came with standard assignments. Eleanor was placed in the 47th Infantry Division, a unit considered low-priority garrison duty. No one expected much from them. No one expected much from her. Then the Drakari swarm invaded. The Drakari were unlike anything the Coalition had faced in generations, a hive-minded species that struck with overwhelming numbers and ruthless efficiency. They poured through a wormhole in the Tertius sector, immediately overwhelming 3 border worlds. The Coalition's finest divisions mobilized, including the celebrated 12th Craxi Legion and the elite Velthan Guard. The 47th Infantry was assigned to defend a small mining colony on Tertius 4, a planet deemed strategically insignificant. It was supposed to be safe. When the Drakari drop pods rained from the sky like meteors, that assumption died. "All units, fall back to the secondary perimeter." Captain Throlinex's voice crackled over the comm, panic evident even through the translator. The Craxi officer had never faced an enemy like this. Thousands of Drakari soldiers, moving with perfect coordination, adapting to every tactic the Coalition employed. Eleanor watched the tactical display with focused intensity. The retreat was a mistake. She could see it. The secondary perimeter had too many vulnerable access points. They needed permission to speak, "Sir," she said, her voice calm despite the chaos around them. "Not now, Private Harris." But Eleanor was already moving. She grabbed George and 2 other soldiers. "The mining tunnels. We can collapse them, create a bottleneck at Ridge 7. That's suicide," George protested. "We'd be cutting off our own retreat. We're dead anyway if we keep running," Eleanor said flatly. "But if we choose where to fight, we can win." Something in her certainty convinced him. For soldiers broke from the retreating column and sprinted toward the ridge while Their comrades drew the Drakari attention. What happened over the next 6 hours became legend. Eleanor didn't just collapse the tunnels, she turned the entire mining complex into a trap, using the facility's industrial equipment as weapons. She created kill zones that negated the Drakari's numerical advantage. She hacked the colony's automated systems, using mining drones as explosive devices. She predicted enemy movements with uncanny accuracy, always staying 2 steps ahead. When ammunition ran low, she improvised. When communications failed, she adapted. When George took a hit protecting their position, she stabilized him while simultaneously coordinating their defense. The Drakari kept coming, but Eleanor kept fighting. Coalition reinforcements arrived to find four soldiers battered, exhausted, but alive, standing among the bodies of over 300 Drakari warriors. The enemy had paid in blood for every meter of ground, and in the end, they'd gained nothing. News of the stand at Tertiusfor spread rapidly. But what came next shocked everyone. Coalition intelligence intercepted Drakari communications. The hive mind was analyzing its defeats, categorizing threats, reassigning priorities. And there, in their strategic assessment, was a name: Eleanor Harris. Threat level: Apex. The Drakari had fought coalition forces across a dozen worlds. They'd faced Craxi champions and Velthan masters. But this small human, the one everyone had doubted, was the first individual they'd specifically designated for elimination. In their collective consciousness, she represented something they couldn't predict, couldn't counter: human unpredictability combined with tactical brilliance. When Eleanor received her commendation, the Coalition's highest honor, Commander Veshtar himself, presented it. The same officer who'd dismissed her at recruitment now stood at attention, respect evident in his bearing. "I was wrong about you, Lieutenant Harris," he said. Using her new rank, about all humans, perhaps, Eleanor accepted the medal with quiet grace. "You weren't entirely wrong, Commander. We are fragile. We are weak. But we're also something you didn't account for." "And what is that?" Eleanor smiled, thinking of every doubt, every dismissal, every challenge that had forged her into who she'd become. Dangerous when underestimated. The Drakari would learn that lesson the hard way. They'd made humanity their enemy, and worse, they'd made Eleanor Harris their primary target. The greatest threat they'd ever faced wasn't the strongest or the fastest. It was the one they should never have doubted.